Episode 7 of Power Book 4, Season 3 completely destroys the program, and it's never been greater. There is so much betrayal in Power Book 4, Season 3, Episode 7 that it will give Starz viewers the chills, but that's also what makes it so entertaining. Spoiler alert, Season 3, Episode 7 of Power Book 4, Force contains spoilers. Season 3, Episode 7 dispels any doubts about the conclusion of Power Book 4, Force. The title, Lines in the Sand, is too subdued for this hour, which undermines all viewers' preconceived notions about the Starz drama. The shocking cherry on top is the death of another major character. Fans will have a hard time keeping up with the shifting relationships since there is so much backstabbing and double-crossing in this episode. Everyone is more self-serving than they have ever been. But nothing remains the same after the dust settles. Those who were formerly adversaries are now possible allies, while those who were allies are now fierce rivals. This will go down in history as the episode where Tommy, Egan and Diamond Sampson fought and the coalition broke up. The battle between actors Joseph Sikora and Isaac Keys is as intense and visceral as it should be. It must feel almost apocalyptic because this is destroying the show's core, and it does. Since the beginning of Power Book 4, Season 3, viewers have witnessed Jenard get more and more in his brother's ear, so it's not entirely shocking that Tommy and Diamond's alliance has ultimately broken. It felt like the last straw when Diamond and Jenard struck a contract to transport fentanyl. Although Tommy and Diamond had disagreed, doing something that Tommy and Shanti, Showstopper, page so obviously disagreed with was a clear choice of sides. However, considering how much the audience has invested in Tommy and Diamond over the past 2 or more seasons, it is still heartbreaking to watch them clash even with the writing on the wall. There is no true way out of this, and fans wanted them to be ride or die. It's difficult to believe they will ever trust each other again after everything that was revealed, even though there are still 3 episodes left. However, they are not the only ones facing difficulties. Jenard and Shanti's relationship ends when she discovers him having sex with Jade in a party toilet. Jenard's inability to control his annoyance with Shanti is a perfect illustration of his careless actions. However, when it is discovered that Tommy paid Jade to hook up with Jenard in an attempt to discredit him, Force exacerbates the situation. In Season 3, Episode 7, there is a single, "Are you serious?" moment. Another is Shanti hitting Jenard's Lamborghini with a baseball bat. He deserves all of her rage, regardless of how it occurred. Jenard is attempting to play all sides since he is so obsessed with defeating Tommy. Tommy and Shanti are an ideal team in a different life. If only because he and Shanti are similar in their ruthlessness and strategic thinking, I dare say they would have been even better than him and Liliana. However, you might equally argue that they would both feel the urge to be on top, which would lead to them crashing and burning. In any case, Tommy had no choice but to play off the fentanyl deal, and he eventually came to the realization that he needed to take action with Jenard. Getting to his relationship with Shanti was the best option because Diamond wasn't going to be the way. Although there was love and caring between Jenard and Shanti during their adorable moments, their restored passion was also the result of opportunity. Because they were both voicing the things they had been ignoring, they both took it to hell when it all blew up in the restroom. For a little moment, I genuinely believed Jenard was going to leave because the female at the club was a setup, if I've ever seen one. I'm such a fool. Their altercation was the kind of nasty behavior that results from people who are very resentful of someone, and it's not the kind of disagreement that can be resolved later. Jenard became defensive and attempted to strike back while his pants were still undone because Shanti meant everything she said with all of her heart. On a typical day, I can't take Jenard seriously, but when he was the one at fault in that restroom, he was going through a lot. Shanti deserved to have his car hit with a bat, but he and Diamond deserved to have their spots blown up even more. I was relieved when Shanti revealed everything about Diamond and Jenard's attempt to set D-Mac up. It had been killing me that Tommy was unaware of how much Diamond was scheming behind his back. Tommy isn't innocent, and I don't mean to imply that he's a saint who hasn't deceived Diamond or wouldn't act in his own best interests rather than Diamond's. Nevertheless, Tommy never gave the go-ahead to kill his nephew. Although I was glad Shanti told Tommy, I do worry whether Tommy will now be suspicious of Shanti because he is intelligent enough to understand that he would not have known if he hadn't set up a scheme for Jenard to harm her. Tommy and Diamond's trust has been formally broken, and I'm not sure how I feel about that. I suppose we'll see in the future if Tommy still has faith in her. Even though folks like me didn't always want to acknowledge it, their relationship was always brittle. This breakup was unavoidable since Tommy learned the truth about D-Mac and Diamond felt more like himself than ever. Tommy isn't a fighter like that, but he also doesn't back down from a challenge, which is why his challenge to fight Diamond was so insincere. Tommy was clearly saddened in addition to being angry at the treachery. Tommy aspired to be the best with Diamond. The good news is that Gary Lennon and colleagues have 3 episodes to thoroughly examine the effects of all these acts because they took this very early. All of the violence that should result from all of this pain and betrayal will be shown to audiences. The stakes in Power Book 4, Force have skyrocketed in just 1 hour. Tommy rarely does anything that surprises me after all this time. To be fair, the shock in Power Book 4, Force Season 3 Episode 7 was more about the timing than the actual events, but a shock is still a shock. Tommy Egan made me gasp and laid the groundwork for this series' spectacular finale. Force in Power Book 4. My favorite episode of Season 3 was Episode 6, which really advanced the plot and began assembling the elements for the conclusion. However, the hour this week was even better. It was slow-moving at times, but you could feel that things were developing throughout the season, especially in those early hours. This season hasn't been as fast-paced as we're used to power shows. However, they are intensifying things over these last few hours. It was, in fact, a long time coming for many of the tales that had been simmering throughout the season to come to a head. Tommy hasn't given the game his all attention because he has been pulled in many different directions during the season. However, you could argue that the worst problem of all was that he was unaware that he needed to keep his head on a swivel. Despite their occasional disagreements, Tommy and Diamond have managed to maintain harmony and focus on their primary goal of producing money. But a gap has been gradually widening, with Tommy not really understanding that the brothers have been becoming closer and Jenard being more and more in Diamond's ear. This has been gradually pushing Tommy out. It's intriguing, though, that Diamond occasionally continued to support Tommy over Jenard despite being back on the pro-Jenard bandwagon. And I thought that was the first time Tommy saw Jenard as more than just an annoyance, so I really enjoyed their little discussion when Tommy asked him to threaten Vic. Although Jenard's problems were evident during this hour, he recognizes the impact he has on Diamond and seizes every chance to push Tommy farther and farther away. He's not really assisting Vic when he visits Vic at Tommy's request, but he's also not there to assist Tommy in any way. Tommy will benefit from having more adversaries, or at the very least, more people who are angry with him in general. Jenard may share Tommy's aspirations to own the Chicago Drug Company, but for now, he just needs Tommy out of the way. That was always at the center of his and Shanti's plans, but you could tell that their relationship was on borrowed time in every aspect the moment he began withholding information from her. Jenard gives Vic Flynn a bone when Diamond and Tommy send him to scare some sense into him. When Vic rightfully questions why, Jenard launches into another mini-rant against Tommy. Vic is forced to make his own unsettling choice as a result. He murders his childhood buddy Connor in order to use him as a patsy for the Albanian attack, just as the CBI did with D-Mac earlier this season. Vic's ability to kill a childhood friend in the back speaks everything about how desperate the main protagonists are to survive. Regretfully, one of them falls short in that regard. The last Power Book 4, Force episode starring Miriam A. Hyman as Stacy Marks is titled, Lines in the Sand. Stacy, upset, chooses to confront Tommy, but Tommy is done taking misery from anyone after his altercation with Diamond. As soon as she tries to apprehend him, he shoots her. This is yet another intriguing decision made by the Force creative team, as it clearly leaves a significant gap on the government's end. But the solution is as clear: viewers already know that Bill Sang is crooked, and it is highly likely that Sang will enter that field. Tommy, Diamond, and even Miguel will suffer greatly as a result, but fans will get to enjoy actor Alan Oy much more. However, Hyman makes a strong exit because it's obvious that Stacy is reaching her breaking point. There was literally nowhere for her to go because her integrity was the only thing separating her from Tommy. As if it weren't enough, Miguel Garcia escapes Ortega's attempt on his life. He also manages to stave off Ortega's goons long enough for one of them to stab the other rather than him, which is a fairly clever move. Ortega targets Miguel's sister once the hitman reveals that Mireya is expecting. Once more, this is not surprising. Everyone knew that Mireya and her unborn child would be in trouble as soon as her pregnancy was made public. The power cosmos is devoid of safe havens. However, like Stacy's passing, Ortega's decision adds a new dimension to the story. It's the reason Tommy and Miguel are working together. It will be necessary for these two fierce rivals to become friends, and in any case, they will soon become family. With some incredibly potent scenes, Power Book 4, Force has completely changed its plot in a comparatively short amount of time. It appears that Ortega, Diamond, and Jenard will face Miguel and Tommy, either individually or jointly, who knows? Which side will Vic and Shanti ultimately support? Will Madame Wu and her group ultimately be involved in more than just Diamond and Tommy's breakup? Was Kate Egan merely making a brief appearance? No one can truly be trusted, and every alliance that Force supporters believed they understood is shattered on the ground.